Finland! I don't know if you could hear it, but there's like horrible cicada noises right now, and it's too hot to close my window. Hi, welcome Gates of Hell gamers. You just spent either $30, $15, or some combination thereof on the exciting tactical game Gates of Hell, Call to Arms, Gates of Hell, Ostfront for PC and the PS3. It's a silent port. So you're probably like, why are you making this video? Oh, is this a tutorial? Okay, first things first. I'm not doing a tutorial for like press right click to move your units. Maybe I'll mention it, but I'm really drunk. Okay, this is a crash course of what I feel is everything that is not covered by the game or the game's tutorials. I may be wrong in that assessment, but being the alpha male I am, I was like, I don't need no directions. I just jumped straight into the game, which was a horrible mistake. This is probably going to be more geared around playing your first couple of games against the AI in skirmish, or maybe a local skirmish. If you're sitting there like, what is this guy talking about? Gates of Hell Ostfront is an Eastern Front World War II modification for the game Call to Arms. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I don't think Call to Arms is very good, but it's supposed to be really good if it's modded. My personal opinion, that means it's still not the best, it just means the mods are very good, you know? Okay, so here's the first thing. If you go into the multiplayer tab, you can load up a skirmish game against the AI. I honestly think a 1v1 versus the easy AI is the best route to go. If you're looking at this very dense layout, let's just say this, there are a few things you might want to change before you go into your first match. Now, I think for learning the game, you should start off in the early war period. There's a period selector, and there are actually different doctrines for each period. And there are 4, which is crazy. For each faction, there are sort of like 4 different armies, or 4 different, like Company of Heroes 2 officers, yeah, that sort of thing. Commanders. What were they called? What was that game? So there's 4 different styles of play. If you're feeling really cautious, I'd say just go for the all-round doctrine, but honestly, there's really no way to go wrong because what the doctrines are unique units that you can only get a certain number of per game. So you get 100 doctrine points, DP, double penetrate, DP, and after you spend them, they're just gone like the wind, like we're all going. But aside from that, you'll still have access to your faction's normal units for that period. So early war is pretty good because it's not super tank heavy, unless you're playing as the Soviets and you get a KV-1, you ruin the other person's day. I'll teach you how to deal with that, I promise, maybe. Load it up. Get ready to go. They just added late war Finland. Okay, so when you load into the match, on the right you'll see all these tabs. The first is an infantry tab. Now most likely, unless you really want to try something epic, you're going to want to try and send in one of the basic infantry units. And when you send that in, unpause the video and we'll go to the next step. This is like an interactive VHS tape now. I'm waiting for you. Okay, so when you have a squad, if you've just played something like Company of Heroes 2 before, yes, left click does select your units, right click does tell them to move. Alright, I guess I lied. Those are the basic controls, right? You've got all these other buttons, and you're like, what is this, a grenade? When you have a squad or a group of units, you can hold down left click, and whatever you select will actually become its own squads. There's sort of like a dynamic squad system. So I'd say move them into that zones, move them up. You're going to want to get into those little zones in the map if you're playing a domination mode. If you're playing something else, I can't help you. But the other feature of this game is not only is it an amazing RTS experience, you can press the E button to actually directly control a unit. And this applies to artillery guns, tanks, everything in the game. Here's some footage of me controlling a bicycle, because that's how next gen this is. So if you press the T button, you can actually turn the game into a third-person shooter. And I found out recently that you can actually command your squad while doing this. So if the soldier's part of a squad, you can command the rest of them by pressing middle mouse button, which just, it's basically Brothers in Arms 3, am I right? Or 4. I don't remember what that series left off on. And there are a ton of controls. I wish I could be more helpful, I'm sorry. But, you know, WASD to move, shoot is left click. I'll tell you right now, Y is to reload. I was a little angry when I found that out. And while we're here, this is sort of important. Whenever you're controlling units, Alt will make them crouch, and Control will make them prone. Now, that may sound really weird and arbitrary. Keep in mind that in Men of War Assault Squad 2, which this game is sort of, I wouldn't say based on, but related to, incestuously, the prone command used to be Shift Q. So listen, you chill out there with the critiques, okay? So as we're moving our infantry up, as we're commanding them around, you might notice that if you hover your cursor over cover while having a squad selected, you can see little silhouettes. If you press right click, they'll move into those cover positions that are being outlined. Now, if you hold and drag right click, they will actually spread out and find other positions. This can be kind of useful. It's kind of jank though, because sometimes they'll face in random directions. But another feature is if you're not clicking on cover and you hold right click, you can actually make them fan out, which can be really useful, or body block your tanks, which could result in some run over conscripts. So, hey, There are also a few factional differences. Some factions get cheaper engineers, cheaper vehicles, Soviet technicals, that sort of thing. And if you're playing a skirmish mode, different units will unlock with time. In addition to the CP, there's also MP. I'm gonna say MP, I'm probably wrong. I'm like 80% I'm wrong. So there is like a population cap. Now there are a few ways to reduce it, but most commonly, in the second tab, there's an officer unit. The officer unit is very expensive, but I'm going to transition here because the officer has some unique controls. Now, the Gates of Hell devs do have a video covering the officer, but strangely enough, they don't mention some of this stuff, and maybe I'm just... So, the officer is a very expensive unit that has a few weird perks. One of them is that if the officer is on a capture point, he overrules everything else. Kinda wouldn't recommend doing that though, because odds are he's just gonna die. But the other thing is that the officer gets binoculars. So the binoculars allow you to increase your sight range and spot units. Now what this can let you do is get the drop on enemy units, basically point them out for artillery, but it can be a bit confusing using them. So first of all, in the bottom left there's a little equipment section. If you click on that, you can force your officer to change to binoculars. If you're controlling the officer, I believe it's 1. The binocular controls are a little weird. If you're doing a top-down view, it works very well, in my opinion. But another thing, and this is going into more controls, controls are going to be a lot of what this video is. If you go to the toolbar on the bottom, there should be a couple of little icons for attack and attack ground. Attack ground is F6. If you press F6, while you're having your officer selected and something's not being obstructed, he will basically spot a little circle around that area. So you can use that to keep an area spotted for an extended period of time, as long as there's nothing obstructing him. He doesn't get bored, or sometimes it glitches out, or if he gets, blown up or whatever. F5 is a little more niche. The biggest use I've found for it is for tanks. F5 actually allows you to command tanks to shoot a specific part of a tank. So like a common strat is to shoot the gun barrel. If you break the other tank's gun, can't really shoot you. Tanks are made out of like paper in this game, which I actually think is pretty realistic, so I think it's pretty fair. Okay, so that's all for the officer, right? Did I mention the officer also reduces your pop cap so you can call in more units? Because that was what I was kind of getting at. I'm trying to cram this all in, like I'm trying to get you ready. Okay, so when you get on the battlefield, and you're fighting that guard squad or those Gerber Jaegers, you know what's up. What am I talking about? I don't know what I'm playing in the background at this point, but another important thing are X and C. I don't know if there's any way I could briefly explain X and C to you. It's just kind of a core concept of the game, but X is basically an inspect. So if I was to steal a flamethrower from a dead enemy unit, which I can do with one of my infantrymen, I would walk up to that, I'd have him walk up to that dead guy, and then if I press C, I could see all the weapons on the ground. So C is to see the flamethrower. You got that? Now, when I click on it with the little hand, he'll pick up the flamethrower. Now, X is to examine his inventory, so I can steal his fuel can and have a murderous rampage. So C is to see the weapons on the ground. X is to examine the inventory. I'm probably... Sorry. I don't know if... This is kind of getting to like Barney tier of explanation. So for example, tanks require repair kits to fix. Actually, everything does. But say your tank has a broken track and it's sitting in the middle of the road, just getting ready to get pelted. And you need an engineer to go over there and fix it. Well, if there's no repair kits in that tank, you're out of luck, buddy. So you might need to look for a wreck nearby, or you could call in a truck. They're very cheap. They cost about 30 points, 30 buckaroos. And then you could actually steal a repair kit from it. It's a little weird. If you park the truck close enough, your engineer should be able to figure it out, but usually if you have a wreck nearby, you could salvage that for tools, or even like a satchel charge to blow up a bigger tank. There's a few other weird mechanics. Like I said, you could toss satchel charges at tanks, because this is a video game. And flamethrowers can blow up any vehicle in the game. You just need to hit the engine from behind. If you hit it from the back, it's going off track, if you know what I'm saying. Oh, did I mention that when you're controlling a squad, you can use F1 through 9 to actually select the squad member? This includes tanks, so you can like genuinely just be like a little tank commander and move your guys around. I don't know if it's super optimal, but it at least allows you to have your men screen the tank. And by screen, I mean attract bullets. AT guns, if you hit control, they'll go from movement mode to fire mode, or vice versa, which is really useful. So your tanks are, I'd call it suicidal, is probably the best word. If you tell them to go a pretty far distance, they'll either take a crazy road or turn around and just show their rear to the enemy, which is not good. So a lot of times you'll end up shift queuing them. So if you give an order and press shift, You can queue stuff up, you can plant more than one landmine, place more than one defense, the sky's the limit. So if you want your tank to move in reverse at the moment, the best way to accomplish this is to right-click behind the tank while holding shift, and then keep doing it in really small increments, and hopefully it'll not, you know. Oh, one other bit of advice I wanted to give. Scouting is kind of a huge thing in this game. It's not super apparent, like when you're playing the game, but it does make a difference. Infantry squads are a bit harder to detect than tanks. If you have them go prone by pressing control and then turn off their fire, unless they're detected, you can have them sit in a bush and kind of just hide and spot stuff for you. There are certain units in the game that are specifically scout units, and they have a further sight range. The difference between them and something like an officer or an observation vehicle is that the officer or a vehicle will kind of have like a cone, like a very specific area it's spotting, whereas a scout unit kind of has a wider field of view while also having a bit more range. So that's a useful tip for both multiplayer and single player. But I'm scared of the people who play multiplayer in this game, so I wouldn't take my advice. You know, come to think of it, just ignore everything. Play Finland. Buy the Finland DLC. You get a Stug. Get the crab, the Panzer crab. So yeah, thanks for tuning in to my first Gates of Hell video. It's been a rousing success, I'm sure. These are all things that were running through my head, and I slowly had to learn through amorphosis. Is that what they call it? Immersion? Like when a sponge picks up all the water. And I hope it will prove helpful for you if you're interested in this game. I think it's absolutely amazing. A team of individuals was able to rework Call to Arms into something as impressive as this. It's very fun. It can be kind of jank. Conquest makes me want to scream, but I definitely think it was worth the money. And just wanted to, you know, provide some more resources, because I feel like there's a lot of tutorials for like, this is how you move. This is how you buy a unit. Oh, and also you can take those icons in the bottom right and actually drag them anywhere you want in the hotbar. This little bar down here can be kind of useful. Depends. You can put mines or other items there, and then if you shift click, you kind of can build them faster. Yet again, F8 is medicine, makes him heal. Hi, this is a post-editing Goose here, I guess. This video took a bit longer than I anticipated, as per usual. One tip that I wanted to include but forgot about was pressing space to force a tank or a gun to change between ammo types. HE is generally better against infantry, AP is generally better against vehicles, although with single-shot weapons, I think HE is a bit better against trucks. This game is very complex, so there's probably a lot of stuff I missed. I actually forgot to wrap up the video when I recorded that. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I hope to have more content to come, probably of various games. And yeah, I hope this was useful. Leave a little commento. Panties.